Cool. All right.
All right.
What's up, Carlos? How are you?
Nothing. Good to see you. It's always nice to put a face to a name.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. All right. Well, I am super excited to get this going. And so yeah, a little bit about myself.
Mhm.
Alberto's gonna jump in here in a little while.
Okay.
I have been living down here in Playa del Carmen for 2 years now, in Mexico for 4 years.
Nice.
Uh, I purchased a home here in 2021,
Mhm.
and I took a loan from a company named Casa Express.
Mhm.
Now, Casa Express is probably one of the worst companies I've ever dealt with.
Yeah,
You
I'm not
probably
really
heard
fond
that.
of them. Yeah,
Yeah, you probably
I've heard
heard that.
horror stories, literally.
Yeah, I have a horror story. And so I started working with Alberto a couple of
Mhm.
months ago, and
Mhm.
we were talking about we were talking about the implications that financing could have in this area on
Mhm.
in from a buyer's perspective as well as a
Mhm.
developer's perspective and everything.
Mhm.
So I want to
Mhm.
dive deep today into basically how financing one, I want to start with how financing is going to change kind of the layout and the land of what is being sold here. And the other
Mhm.
part of this is I want to get as much information from you as possible on everything that you do, the connections that you have, how financing can work with your bank. So
Mhm.
as we start, I think I want to kind of give a background of why this is a big deal for down here. So, as of right now, I mean, we have Cancun.
Mhm.
Puerto Morelos is going to be put
Mhm.
on the map because of the new train stop.
Mhm.
Playa del Carmen, as well as Tulum, and all the way down to Mahahual and Bacalar.
Right.
Now, what we've seen in Tulum happening is that the developers are building one-bedroom apartments, and those
Mhm.
one-bedroom
Studios.
apartments are, yeah, studios, one-bedroom apartments. And what's happening is the developers, they have to sell their projects, right? And so
Mhm.
since we don't have any sort of financing as we know it until now,
Mhm.
um, the developers look at an Excel spreadsheet and they say, okay, we have X amount of square meters to build. We can divide this
Mhm.
stuff, and it's much easier to get a what's it called? 140,000 or 150, $200,000 in cash from the buyers than it is to
Mhm.
get, for a 3 bedroom, 400, $600,000 in cash. And
Mhm.
so what I've seen with the data from AirDNA is that basically, we have 4,000 one-bedroom slash studio
Oh.
units available here in
Mhm.
Tulum specifically. And
Mhm.
the implications of that is that they are kind of cannibalizing themselves or shooting themselves in the foot, because when it comes to the resales, a new buyer is looking for a new property, and they're having these one-bedroom apartments and studios being built,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
affecting the market. It's affecting the
Mhm.
market. And real estate agents, agencies are still selling these, which is not a problem. But as we expand in Tulum and in this area of Quintana Roo,
Mhm.
is that there is there's more supply than there is demand, because
Mhm.
when we look at the demand for travelers, they want to travel in groups, right? So they come
Mhm.
with maybe
Mhm.
two couples or something
Right.
like that. And there's a limited supply of
Mhm.
3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms or even houses. And so when we have this unbalance
Mhm.
of, it kind of messes up the market. And really, that
Mhm.
piece that we're missing is financing.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of my clients, a lot of Alberto's clients, they can take out a HELOC in the United States. They can take
Mhm.
out cash out refi,
Mhm.
but as we
But
know
but
it
7-8%.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know exactly. It depends on their credit score. It depends on the equity they have in the home. It depends on the risk tolerance and things like that. But what we have seen is that not everybody has a house in the United States that they have the ability to take out this HELOC or this cash out refi. So they want to purchase a home somewhere here in Mexico. They either have to use a company named Moxie or cross-border lending. And there are some issues with those. Or Tucasa, which I have a YouTube video that anybody watching this can go back and see the horror stories from Tucasa. But the reason why Moxie doesn't work is because we don't have title insurance here in the state of Quintana Roo. And the value of the home needs to be above, I think it's like 675,000 to get a 60 LTV, 60% loan to value ratio. And the issue with that is that there's no developers that are really building a home for 600,000 in value without doing it in pre-sales. And so the other part of it is the majority of the homes or condos are not at that value as of yet right now, because as Tulum grows, I mean, you can get, I mean, even in Playa, you can buy a house. The house that I'm in Playa is not even worth 600,000 as of yet. And so there's no way that Moxie could work because of the title insurance, and the values of the homes are not that expensive. So we're in this limbo phase of anything above 300,000 to about 600 is where you can get a nice 3-bedroom to a villa private home. But there is the thing that's missing is the financing. And so I think it's important to give kind of that background on why this is a big deal and how this can really change the market for both investors as well as the developers. Because if developers know that they have an outlet of being able to get some sort of financing and the buyer can buy it, and they are going to receive their money, right? So you'll get into it in a minute, but basically the buyer will put down a percentage and then the rest of it will be funded by the bank. And now the buyer obviously has to pay the bank. So I guess to start, let's jump into who you are, how long you've been in this industry, and then what you offer. And I'll have some people ask some questions as we go, and we can answer them. But I think this is going to be a pretty good video for our subscribers and people who are looking to invest down here and really don't have this clear-cut information. I've been looking for someone like yourself for like 2.5 years.
All right. I hope I'm the one.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you have to say, and let's jump into it. So go ahead.
All right. So my name is Carlos Peña. I work out of Mexico City. I'm a family guy, regular guy. I've been in the mortgage brokerage business for nearly 10 years. I am associated with a company called Tu Hipoteca Fácil. You can always Google us, look us up. We are what I believe is the best brokerage company in Mexico. We have a pretty good track record over the last 20 years. So in terms of financing for foreigners, what I can share with you today is after the Lehman Brothers meltdown back in 2008, pretty much financing in Mexico for non-resident or foreigners altogether was shut down. And I would say that since I joined the company, this, like I said, nearly 10 years ago, I said to the founder, Fernando Soto, hey, you know, my father's family is from Puerto Vallarta, and that's a huge spot, a huge area of opportunity. I don't know why banks are not looking into beach resorts. And he said, yeah, I know. The thing is that, you know, banks really got freaked out about what happened back in 2008, but little by little, we're going to pick it up. So I, together, because he has really good connections up in some basically the whole banking industry. He was able to make mortgage directors and bank CEOs aware of the niche that is there. It's no surprise that it is expected that nearly 60 million baby boomers are going to retire within the next 20 years or so. So it's a huge opportunity for Mexico, as the cost of living down here is just a fraction of what it is in the United States. So obviously, it's a no-brainer that their pensions will last a lot longer down here, and particularly in the area of Cancun, Playa, Tulum, which is part of the Yucatan Peninsula, just out of Florida. There are big plans to make that some sort of a medical clinical hub for people from Florida, Texas to fly down to Mexico for that kind of medical tourism, again, for a fraction of the cost. So it all makes sense, you know, to start developing, to create properties that can be appreciated by North Americans. So I would say that since early last year, we started financing fully Americans, Canadians, and European Union nationals. But I gotta be honest, the main focus from banks has been on US citizens, and that's okay because the market is huge, obviously. So right now we can work with 2 banks. We're sure that along the way, more banks are gonna be jumping into the wagon. So we're working with 2 national banks. And there are no Mexican banks left anymore. I mean, there's one out there that's named Banorte, but they're not really into this equation right now. So we can work with a Spanish bank, multinational bank, and a British bank, also multinational. The terms, and this is the part that is really attractive. I mean, there are many points to go over, but any foreigner, in this case a U.S. citizen, would be subject to the same terms and conditions as a Mexican national. They do not have to face a higher risk premium, if you will. So, like, if I were today to look for a loan, as you know, the benchmark rate in the U.S. is around 5.25. In Mexico, that same benchmark rate is around 11.50. So there are 600 base points, more or less, difference between the US and Mexico. So basically, what that means is that the cost of money in Mexico is 11.25%, but you can still get loan rates in Mexico at 10%. Now, I know that may sound higher for a US national, but I mean, if you look at the average for a 30 mortgage rate in the United States, it's probably closer to 7.5 or 8% in some instances. And here's the upstream, in my opinion. The loan that we are able to secure for investors is originated in pesos. So later we can share, or we can talk some history about the behavior of the Mexican peso versus the US dollar, but it's pretty simple. The peso loses value versus the US dollar over time, guaranteed. So what this means is when the peso takes its normal trend of losing value, let's say a U.S. citizen who took a loan back in 2008, 2009, probably was paying, say, $1,000 for a $100,000 loan back in the day. Today, he continues to pay the same amount in pesos because rates down here are fixed. We do not do adjustables. But his outlay of cash is basically half. So, I mean, whether interest rates in the States are 6%, 5%, 7%, I mean, I think you just can't beat that out. Having to allocate less and less of your disposable income for pay for a loan originated in pesos, because the peso, like I said, has a history of losing value. So rates, like I said, that right now are around 10%. It's really up to the profile of the bank, the risk assessment. In some instances, I believe it is still possible to get a loan at a 1-digit rate under 10%, but I'd rather play it safe and say it's going to be in the range of 10%. Now, terms in Mexico are different from the United States. The longest term that we can get in Mexico is 20 years. Some banks are starting to look at 25, but it's going to take some time before that gains any traction. one of the main difference in Mexico is that mortgages in Mexico, in your monthly installment, it is already considered two kinds of insurance payments: life insurance, which entails disability and death, and damages insurance, which in the case of the Yucatan Peninsula in the Caribbean, it's quite relevant. It's always exposed to natural disasters such as hurricanes.
Yeah.
Just trying to give a big picture here. Some costs that any one investor has to bear in mind out here, pretty much like in the States, I would say, is an appraisal, and closing costs. But we can go into further detail, as we move forward. That's pretty much the bigger picture. I don't know, Nick, if you at this point you have any prompt where you would like to take this conversation for our audience.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get hung up on the rate, right? They say, oh, 10% is so much. Now, I think it's important to back up to, if someone's watching this, to understand that, okay, we have a 10% rate here that allows you to get into the game in a larger property, where there's a saying that, like, it takes money to make money, right? And I'm talking based on my experience. My home, I have a 90% occupancy here in Mexico for an average price of $330 a night over the course of a year. So if I have,
pretty good.
If we do 365 days times 90%, that's
more than 300 days a year.
328 days times $330 average. That's 108,000 US dollars in revenue.
Passive income, yeah.
At a 10% rate, I mean, I'm not gonna go too deep into the math, but that's at least a $40,000, profit per year for not doing anything other than running your Airbnb and taking advantage of taking advantage of the properties that are not there, right? And so you're getting into a property that is naturally a higher in competition just because you have access to this amount of money, this loan. And so when I hear people say, oh yeah, 10%, that's way too much. And then I ask them, okay, let's say your mortgage over 20 years, because you can do 20 years, cost you $2,500, or let's just say $3,000, but you're bringing in $9,000 a month. What does it matter about the rate?
It just pays off by itself. Yeah.
So a lot of people get hyped up on the rate because they're used to, oh yeah. And when I look at it as a business. If I can get into this Airbnb game or this real estate game, and my payments are $3,000 a month, let's just say $4,000 a month, my unit brings in about $8,000 to $17,000 a month, depending on the season. And so I look at it as a big picture where the rate doesn't necessarily need to be there. Now, this also does not include appreciation, right? So your cap rate is even higher. And we'll get into this in a little bit. I also want to talk to you about, borrowing and taking equity out of the home with the loan with you guys. But I think that's a super important thing to touch on, because I do hear that a lot. Yeah, I'm not going to get a loan because it's 9%, it's 11%. And I'm like, well, what does that matter when you're bringing in, $8,000 in profit minus your cost? You have electricity, you have Wi-Fi, you have water, you have HOA, or whatever the case is. So that's one thing. The other thing is the closing cost and appraisal, right? So you mentioned that there's some fees there. My understanding, my experience working with many different investors here is that, including myself, is that the closing costs are around 6 to 7% of the price of the home. I personally want to refinance my house with you. And when I bought my house in New York, I was able to roll the closing costs into the loan as a seller's concession, is what it's called. So is that something that you guys do where you can roll the closing cost into the loan? And the reason why I ask is because when I bought my house in New York, I thought if I can get, and I bought the house specifically to rent out on Airbnb and with tenants. And you know, if I can use the Airbnb guests' money to pay for that closing cost over a time period, then I get to save my cash. And I think that would be an important, if it's possible. I don't know how that works here, but if that's something that you can do where you roll the closing cost into it, that would be pretty powerful.
Yeah, the straightforward answer is yes. Banks down here are they play it pretty conservative, I would say. Normally, I'd say off the top of my head, a bank would say that the credit line that they are able to issue, in no case it should go beyond 85% of the property value as per appraisal that the bank would have to carry out. So let's say for a $100,000 property, the bank would say, okay, the maximum that I can finance is 85% of that amount. So if that percentage covers, whatever balance that we're going to refinance, good, we're in good shape. Now, normally, at least for operations down here in Mexico, when people come to us, everyone is well below that 85%. In the event that someone would say, mine, I still owe like closer to 90% of what the appraisal value came out at. There are some exceptions, but I would say 85% or whatever is under 85%, we're in good shape. And by the reason why I bring that up is if we are in that 85% range or below, then we can roll those costs. We can put those costs, those closing costs into the refinancing. Now, something important to bear in mind, when you do refinancing, there are a number of line of local taxes that have to be paid for. When anyone makes a purchase, and that will go to investors who would be buying with us, the largest percentage of that 6% closing cost figure, 6% of the property value, that is the going price, is what they call an acquisition tax. That acquisition tax is 2/3 of the whole bill. But when you refinance, since you continue to be the same owner, that tax does not apply. So if anyone asks me, okay, Carlos, okay, let's put this into numbers, give or take, like say Mexico City, which is where I'm working out of. What is the usual fee with notary public and taxes and the like for refinancing? Really, I would say it would be really, really hard for that number to exceed 3,000 US.
Okay.
Which I think is a pretty good number.
That's a good price.
Exactly.
So I have a question. What's the maximum LTV percentage of a property purchase price that can be financed?
For foreigners, I always like to go conservative too. I'd say 70%. It's a good loan to value. Nevertheless, I have had successful cases where we have been able to secure up to 80%.
Okay, so that means 30% down, which is normal here. That's the norm here, and the rest is 70%.
Exactly.
Okay.
As banks are getting more experience, because at the beginning it was a pretty interesting learning curve working with them, tried to explain to them U.S. economy, income tax returns, W-2s and the like. But now I think they're a whole lot more familiarized. At the beginning, we had some restrictions on the largest amount in US dollars that they would be able to issue. One of the banks said, look, I can go up as high as 8 million pesos, which at the time when we had an exchange rate of 20 to 1, it was roughly 400,000 US. Right now, because with this nearshoring thing and lots of dollars coming into Mexico, the peso has actually appreciated a little bit more. So maybe that amount has gone up to about 10%. So I would say that with one of the options, we may be able to finance in upwards to 450,000 US. But with the other bank, the British bank, as far as their policy is, there's no restriction as to what's the maximum loan that they can offer to us.
Okay. Now, does this, with these loans that you guys do, can you buy in pre-construction, or is this already completed homes?
All right, that's a question that I get a lot. When somebody tells me, look, I just got into a pre-construction deal, can you help me finance? My first question will always be, okay, how far out are you from, at least in terms of the contract, how far out are you at getting taking on delivery of the property? If they tell me over a year, I'd say, look, let's just wait, just give it some time. Let's touch base when you are, let's say, 6 months far out. But in the meantime, we can start looking at your documents. At how's your economy? Are you wages and salaries? Okay, let's see how you did for the last 2 fiscal years for your employer's form. Let's look at your income taxes. Let's look at your let's look at your statements. Let's see where we're at. Let's see what kind of deductions you are. Some people are pretty aggressive with their 401k, so they have pretty high deductions. And banks down here, they just don't get it. They think that that money is like subtracted for good from their net pay. So I have to sit down and explain to them how that works. That it's got a tax rate for them. Okay, but that gives me time to sort of prepare, align, get everything in place. So when we are just 6 months out, by that time everything is in place, and I can start putting information together. Why am I mentioning 6 months out? Because the approval process, it's not swift. I gotta tell you. I would say that on average, from the time that we send information to the time that anyone, let's say, it's ready to close the deal, to sign the deed and the bank paperwork, I would say that's going to take anywhere between 60 and 90 days. So it's better to do it, the sooner the better, to try to align everything. So if the bank were to come up with okay, I don't really understand this, I still have the time, to put everything in place. And talking about pre-construction, at least in my experience, developers always fall behind. So I'd rather be ready just in case.
Okay. And another question is there a difference of financing of percentage of purchase price with pre-construction versus a resale, like 30% down for both?
It's pretty standard. I would say 70%, like I said, is like the average, and up to upwards of 80%, whether it's a pre-construction, pre-sale, or resale, like you said. Yeah.
Okay. And then earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that there's possibilities to get single-digit numbers for the rates, right? Are these rates taken by day or by week? How do you guys get that number?
Nick, you're breaking up. Say again.
I was saying that you mentioned that the rates there's the possibility to get single-digit numbers. Are these rates, when you guys look at it, are they taken during each day, or are they taken each week, or how do they pick those rates? Do they fluctuate like they do in the United States, or it's like a market rate?
No. Right. No. We do not do adjustable, so there will be no variation. The only reason why we may be able to secure single digit rate is the bank, the one bank that can give this option will say, look, this we have this approval at, let's say, 10.5%, just for the sake of the argument. Okay. So that the deed will be signed stating 10.5% interest rate. However, one of these banks has what they call a reduction rate program, in which, and we can make that extensive to foreigners if the bank says, yeah, your foreigner client is subject to this. What that would entail is he would have to buy one a bank insurance product from the bank, where the annual premium has to be at least 10,000 pesos, which is basically $500 US. Now, this could be like an additional damages insurance, menage insurance, life insurance, car insurance, whatever. That's condition number one. Condition number two is the bank would, when anyone gets approved with the bank issues a credit card to the bearer of the credit. And then he or she would have to make use of the credit card, which is international, for at least $1,000 US or 20,000 pesos monthly, no exception. That's condition number two. And then the third one is the bearer of the credit would have to make deposits to, and it's an interesting part, it would have to make deposits to their checking account. Mortgages, when anyone gets a mortgage with the bank, he or she, the bearer of the credit, will have to open a bank account with that particular bank. Okay, why? Because mortgages in Mexico are like a recurring bill. On a monthly basis, it's gonna the payment is gonna be billed. How you do not have to wire money from the United States to Mexico, because anyone who gets a loan in Mexico, even if it's a foreigner, will have to open a bank account in Mexico. Now, that entails a different process, but we have everything ready so we can support US citizens in this case, so they can open a bank account, whether they have residency or no residency. That's been taken care of. The banks have already found a way to make that work. So because he or she will already have a bank account open, the third requirement is $1,500 a month have to be deposited to that account. Now, that deposit is just electronic. You know, I'll wire the money and then I'll send it back to whatever account I like. And if you comply with those three conditions, you may be able to bring down your interest rates from whatever interest rate you were approved. A few minutes ago, we said 10.5%, just for example, and then that could bring it down in the neighborhood of 100 points. So it would come down to from 10.5 down to 9.5%.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how much time does that take? So if I heard you correctly, you have to have a credit card in Mexico, which is like American Express or Visa or MasterCard or whatever. And then you have to spend like $1,000, 20,000 pesos per month on that.
Yeah.
So that could be at any store in the United States. If I go to TJ Maxx or Kroger or wherever, then you can spend that. How do you pay that credit card if you live in the United States?
When we open, when anyone gets approved, the bank will say, okay, this client, this lead has already been approved for the loan that you were requesting, Carlos, and he has been issued a credit card with a line of, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000, whatever, US dollars or its equivalency in Mexico. Now, the credit card payment will be also billed to the checking account. So let's say that our first client that we are able to land takes on a $250,000 loan, you know, just for example, that would entail, I would say, paying, this is not perfect, but the payment is going to be around 2,500, 2,700, give or take per month. And then, so what some people have chosen to do is, some just say, okay, every month I'm going to wire the money from the United States to my bank account. Fine, that's good. But of course, that will, some fees will have to be borne into account as you will be doing this like on a monthly basis.
Wise is pretty cheap. You can wire money with Wise Bank.
Exactly.
For $3.
Exactly. Yeah, you do not have to go through SWIFT codes and these things that are pretty hefty financially speaking. Yeah, exactly. So all the people have said, look, I want to forget about this. So I'm just gonna, make a deposit of 10,000 US, and I'm just gonna leave the money there. Okay, that may not be financially the best decision, but okay, that's up to you. Now, other people have said, look, I'm just gonna ask the Airbnb guy to make deposits to my bank account, the bank account that I open in Mexico, and that's taken care of. I think that's the best way to go.
So the money that you make from your property can just, and that's the idea, is to get the money from the property to pay for it. So
Exactly.
you just have that money deposited from Airbnb into your bank account, and that covers it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it.
And then the credit card payment will also be billed from that checking account that you already have open with the Mexican bank.
Yeah. Okay. Another question is how so can you give a general idea of how you qualify the clients for financing? Example, like the income verification, how many years of tax filings, etc. How does that work?
Yeah, so basically we have two profiles. One is those under wages and salaries, those who file a W-2 in the United States. So I would say that the preliminary checklist that I would require from anyone in order to give an educated opinion is I need last 2 years of income tax returns on W-2s, again, for wages and salaries. I would definitely ask for a credit report from one of the three main agencies, whether it's Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. Every now and then people drop me Credit Karma, but that's like a more light report. So I would really make it a point that they go into the website of those three agencies that I mentioned. That helps me to see, number one, what's the credit history like, but also what is their leverage level. Because banks here are pretty conservative. So in their textbooks, no foreigner should allocate more than 30% of their disposable income for taking a loan in Mexico. I have people who make, they make pretty good money in the United States, but they carry several mortgages. So for the bank, is like, look, it's super good that this guy has many mortgages because he has like condos and multifamilies and the like. But for me, I can consider the income as part of it, but I also have to consider that when things get tough, maybe those properties are not going to be rented out. So every now and then I come into conflict trying to explain to people that bank here plays it like really, really safe. That's one. But anyway, going back, 2 years of tax forms, experience, Equifax or TransUnion, and 3 months of banking statements for wages and salaries. That'll do it in order for me to give a pretty good idea of where we're standing at and what we may be able to secure. Now, there's a significant number of people who are not filing a W-2 or 1040. They're like 1099 or K1 investor or whatever. For them, it's pretty much the same credit report. Banks here, they like to see a minimum of 700 FICO score. In the event that anyone were just a little under 700, we can make a case with the bank, and we're pretty good. We have good batting average, but 700 is what the banks have asked us to filter. And then we'd have to look at last 6 months of banking statements to see for cash flow and what's the average income that they can show for. And like I said, with 2 years of 1099s or whatever tax form they are, since they are not wages and salaries. With that, I should be able to provide feedback within, say, 2 or 3 days.
And then if they qualify and they are approved, what is the time period that takes to get funded? That's 60 to 90 days?
Yeah. I think the approval process itself, I get asked a lot about, Carlos, can I get pre-approved? Doesn't work like that in Mexico. We don't do pre-approvals. If you will, when I tell you we're going to do this, is because everything matches, everything adds up. And I know that we are in line with what the bank is expecting minimum in order to run the process, to put it into the pipeline. So when I tell you let's do it, that's if you will, that will be like your pre-approval, but it comes from me. and then we run the process. In order to get an answer in writing, I would say that's going to take about 6 weeks time.
Okay.
Anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks time. I know it can be a little bit torturous at times, because like if I started a process in last month in August, and now we're in September, most likely next week, in fact, it's going to happen. I will ask anyone who I got in pipeline to say, hey, when you get the statement for up to August 31st, please send it down, and the like. So I will have to bring information, keep information up to date. But 6 weeks time, I think, is a pretty safe bet on getting a definitive response from the bank. And with that, I can have the investor, if he wants, to fly down to Mexico and open the bank account. Now, I have found that it's a lot more efficient to save this for the last part. So do not make anyone come down to Mexico just to open a bank account, but save it for the end. What I would have them do is, okay, the ABCs get approval. Number 2, get the appraisal in. Get the report, which I will share, of course, with everyone. And then for the last part is the notary public. That's number 3, step number 3. Notary public, it's a little bit tricky because the Mexican government has a very awkward regulation that states that no foreigner should own a property in Mexico outright. So they have to make the purchase through a trust. The bank and the notary public put together the trust in order for the foreigner to make the purchase, which is basically just to comply with the legal procedure.
The fideicomiso.
Exactly, the fideicomiso. But you are de facto the owner of the property. Because if I were to come up to you, say a month's time, 6 months time, a year, and say, hey, I want to buy that property from you, you can sell the property. As long as you, pay off the loan, which can be done together with the acquisition of anyone who wants to buy the property from you. And you keep the proceeds, of course, of whatever profit you were able to secure. So that second part, it's going to take another 6 weeks time, give or take, because the fideicomiso itself, in my experience, can take up to 30 days. And that's why I come from, I would say people should bear in mind 60 to 90 days in order for them to see the money.
Okay. When we make the monthly payments, the monthly payments, what do they include? Do they include your taxes for the fideicomiso, or you have to pay those at the end of the year? Or what's included in the monthly?
Okay, that's a good question. Of course, we have amortization. We have interest,
and that's at 20 years, right? It's amortized at 20 years.
Yes, I mean, the terms that we can secure are 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Now, since most people in the US are used to 30-year terms, they most likely will go for 20-year term. Overall, there are no penalties for prepayments.
Okay, that was my next question.
Anyone can feel free to, start pitching in 10,000, 20,000, whatever. On a yearly basis or on a regular basis. The only condition that banks, I don't really like this, but they have made it a point, is if anyone pays off the mortgage within the first 3 years fully, then a 2.8 to 3% commission penalty on the outstanding balance may be enforced. So the way we have devised a couple of approaches to deal with this. One is, look, if you are paying this off because somebody is buying the property from you, I need the agreement. I need the contract so I can show it to the bank that it's not that he wants to, get rid of the property. It's just that he's got a great deal. He just cannot pass upon it, and he is going to, pay off the property. Okay, send me the contract. I will, in Mexico, when you're going to pay off a loan, you have to get some sort of letter from the bank where they say the projected balance at the till the last working day of this month is this amount. If you pay it off before that time, then that's the amount and that's the end of it. So in that letter, they will include that 2.83% penalty fee, but that 2.83% fee will be reimbursed what I have seen is within 30 to 45 days afterwards. That's one. Two.
If you have the agreement that you're selling it to somebody.
Exactly.
Okay, so
yeah, exactly.
2.8%, $250,000 loan at 2.8% is
$7,500.
$7,500.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Which of course, I mean, it's nobody wants to lose $7,500. So,
yeah.
But that's one. And you can get your money reimbursed, like I say, about 30, 45 days afterwards. Now, some people say, really, I don't want to deal with this. What's the other option? Okay, the other option is if you have, let's say that you've had the loan for say a year and a half. So for 20 years times 12, that's 240 installments. After a year and a half, you're down to 222 payments ahead still to make. Okay, so you're gonna pay 222 less one. So you're gonna pay 220 or 221 in one shot. So when the next one comes and you still have two or one payment to make, then that penalty will be enforced on just 1 or 2 months, which would be a significantly smaller amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good little trick.
Yeah, banks don't love it, but hey, we're not there to help out banks.
That's a good little trick.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's options to not be penalized. I mean, you might be penalized on a $2,500 payment, not a $250,000 payment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I like it. I had some more questions.
Yeah.
Is there any, like we have PMI, the private mortgage insurance? Is there anything like that PMI in Mexico?
Yeah. You did ask what does the monthly installment entail? So we have amortization, interest. Some banks have this fee. It's very small, but it's annoying. It can be worth anywhere from 15 to 30, 25 US per month, which after, I mean, if anybody, goes the long route for 20 months can come up at a significant number. But it also includes insurance, which is something we touched on at the very beginning. It includes disability, and it includes death. So in the event of such a unfortunate event, the insurance company would pay off the loan in full to the bank, and then the property no longer has a mortgage to pay for. It's important. I think there are two aspects here for foreigners to bear in mind. One is the fiscal aspect, and the other one is having a will, because I mean, even though there are some difference in the law, and I'm not really sure what NAFTA or USMCA has standardized for North American countries, I think that's something to bear in mind. When I mentioned the fiscal part is earlier, we said, what's the best way to pay for the credit card or for the loan? And one of them was, I said, look, whoever bears the credit just says if I rent it out Airbnb or yourself, just deposit to this Mexican account, and that's the end of it. Okay, fine. So obviously, the Internal Revenue Service in Mexico is going to say, here's Nick, or here's Carlos, and he's making some pretty good money. What's going on here? He's a foreigner, or he's a foreigner with no residence, but already has a property in Mexico, because of course banks will have to disclose this information to the Internal Revenue Service. So we are not tax experts, and what I'm about to say should not be considered as legal tax advice, but it may be worthwhile looking into doing your taxes for that Airbnb rental here in Mexico, because the bracket is I think no more than 20%. I think it stands at 19%. And I think in the United States, that will be closer to 30% or the like. So it might be worthwhile looking into doing those taxes in Mexico. And of course, you can do some blind deductions and, reduce your tax amount to pay. But that will be up
Yeah.
to
The way that I have it set
bearer.
up for people in my online course is
Mm-hmm.
we build you an LLC in the United States, and
Mm-hmm.
then we have a holding company in Anguilla, which
Mm-hmm.
allows you to save like 60 to 80% on your taxes, depending on if you're a
Mm-hmm.
W employee. But
Mm-hmm.
and then we also get your residency and your RFC here in Mexico to avoid the taxes
Mm-hmm.
that you're having to pay from Airbnb, and that saves you
Mm-hmm.
another 64% on your taxes. I have all of that already figured out. So if anybody is
Good.
looking at this, I have the people in line. I've done it.
Perfect.
I have a holding company offshore, and LLC is basically a pass-through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll connect you with the right people.
Great.
Now, let me ask you this. In the United States, I've had loans for my house, and they end up the original bank that I got the loan from, they end up either selling it or it gets serviced by another company.
Mm-hmm.
What protection do you have in place that even though these are foreigners, we're not from Mexico, and something happens within the next 20 years and
Mm-hmm.
things change?
Mm-hmm.
What protection is in place that says, okay, listen, your rate is locked in. It's never
Mm-hmm.
going to go up. It's never going to go
Mm-hmm.
down unless maybe you refinance.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to send this loan to another company, and then they try to do something. Or is that something that happens in Mexico? Where the servicer of the loan changes. I mean, it's never happened to me. They usually take the terms over and it's like that, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the same in Mexico.
No, yeah, pretty much is the latter. I mean, I wasn't with the company back in the Lehman meltdown, but I have heard from colleagues that back in the day, GE Money was lending to foreigners in Mexico. And then one of the banks that purchased that account was Santander. And the law here is on that regard, I think it overprotects consumers. So the law states, you just have to abide, you just have to honor whatever is stated in the contract, and you cannot change terms or conditions, especially for the worst part. Huh? If any, they'll try to offer better terms. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And then I had another question. I guess the terms of the loan estimate can't change. Once you're locked in, right?
That's it. The only way I can see a rate going up is if you start falling behind, because it would be like a kind of penalty from the bank. Mm-hmm. But that's about it.
Okay. Let's see if there's anybody else that has any questions too.
Sure.
I'll give it a second.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure lots of questions will come down the road.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, what I have seen is I'm not trying to put myself in people who are trying to invest in Mexico's shoes. I'm trying to get a loan in another country. I don't even speak the language. So what we try to do is we try to make them feel as if we're walking them through step by step, try to be as straightforward as possible. I understand that there is an element of trust that is important to build. But we have been doing this successfully for some time. I also have to be honest. There will be times when the bank will get back to me and said, "No, it's not going to be approved." I said, "What are you talking about? The guy works for Microsoft. That just there's something that I don't like, and that's it. I mean, there's not like something that I can appeal. I may be able to go back and say, these are my numbers, this is my calculation. What do you have there?" And then they will say to me very briefly, "Okay, it has more to do with his age. or with his profile. And it's not the best to get back to someone who was looking forward to securing a deal and said it's not going to work this time, but we can try again 6 months time, let's say.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we try to make people
So
feel
it's a case by case basis for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So let's say, how far in advance can someone secure financing? For example, obtaining financing for a pre-construction, I pay 30% down, and if the remaining 70% is not due to the developer until the delivery date in 2 years.
Yeah, that's pretty much the case that we talked earlier. So what I would say is, of course, I would get in touch with the lead and said, tell me about your economy. And provided that nothing changes in his economy for the next 18 months, I would say, okay, once we're 6 months out, let's start looking at definitive documentation,
like his economic status, the economic status of the person.
Okay. Yeah, provided that it hasn't changed since we already looked at it like a year before, 18 months ahead of time. I mean, nothing changed, everything should be good. Then we'll put together a full checklist. But this is something that I think I left out earlier about this specific point. In order for a bank in Mexico to run an appraisal, especially I mentioned this because the question is regards pre-construction, pre-sale, the property has to be minimum 95% completed. The works progress has to be minimum 95%. Now, 95% completion, it's basically, finishing touches and the like, but it's gotta be there. Let's say that we secure the approval, I said 6 months out, but we get approved like within the next 6 weeks, which is usually the standard, and they're falling behind in the works. So they are not at 95%, they're at 80 or 85. We're gonna be stuck until they reach that 95% milestone. And until then, we can run the approval. What this means is we're gonna fall behind in the rest of the process. Why? Because an approval in Mexico has 3 months time validity. If we don't close the deal within those 3 months, then I have 2 options depending on the bank. I can ask the bank to give me 30 extra days, in which case they will ask me for the economics of the lead for the last, maybe by that time 2 months time has passed by, or 3 in this case, because it has effectively expired. I will have to send information. It's not like we're starting from scratch again, but they will look thoroughly again. Oh, he took more debt. Hey, Carlos, why am I getting rejected this time? My friend, you got a new mortgage in the United States and it's showing in your new credit report. So I will have to be very emphatic on that. I said, please, while we are not approved, do not take any debt, especially if it's pre-construction, because, too many moving parts and something could go wrong.
Okay. Yeah. And so there is a little bit of a risk there too, because if the pre-construction is 2 years out, they put 30% down, and then they find out that they can't get the loan because for some reason the bank says, no, we're not going to do it. Then now they have 2 years to figure that out themselves. But let's say we'll use September 1st is the beginning of 2 years of September 2023. So in 2 years, September 2025, it's going to be ready. Let's say I apply for the loan now. I put my 30% down to the developer. I apply for the loan now, and I don't get any, I don't get approved. But let's say January of 2025, I come back and I reapply. Can I reapply multiple times with you? That way, can I reapply multiple times? If my economic status changed, right?
I mean, I would not use the word like several times or multiple times, but I think if we run the process and we are not approved the first time, obviously I will sit down with the bank and say, okay, what went wrong? I mean, because if I run a process, if I put it into that pipeline, it means that for me, everything checks, everything adds up. So I would get the feedback from them, and they would say to me, I mean, just this is a real case. So recently they turned down a guy because of his age. He's 31, but the argument was he just makes too much money. I'm like, what do you mean he makes too much money? You know, the amount of money that he's making, his estate versus his age just doesn't make us feel comfortable. And I was like, okay. So it was pretty difficult explaining to this lead the bank feedback. And he said, okay, well, when can I try this again? And that's when the bank said to me, 6 months time. But it's not a question of doing it every 6 months. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. If we're going to try it again, it's because it means that, at least in the case of this feedback, we have addressed whatever concerns the bank may have come back with us and said, okay, everything is in line, run it again, and most likely we'll get the approval the second time.
Okay. Another important question, I think, is when I went through the process at the time, you know, even in English, the wording and things of just banks is difficult for me in English. When someone comes to you, they will always work with you with someone that speaks English, because I think that's important for someone to feel, you know, like they're not being taken advantage of, and they understand all the words and everything. The contract, is it written in English? Is it, you know, you speak perfect English. Like I think you told me that you were living in the United States for a while. You went to high school in the US?
I did go to school there, yeah.
Yeah. So
Denver.
I think that's an important thing too for anyone that is looking to make an investment, is they know what they're getting themselves into. That was one thing that Tucasa did not do for me. And that's why I want to get out of it. Because I didn't understand everything, and it's my fault, but at the same time, they purposely made things very, very confusing.
Yeah, they're pretty disgusting techniques that they make use of.
Yeah, but with you, everything is done in English. And the agreement, the contract, the paperwork is in English, or is it both? How does that work?
That's a good question. The banks that we are able to work with, even though one of them is British, but that's not because the banks don't want to try it. It's because Mexican law is so nationalistic, if you will. Is that no, all bank documentation has been done in Spanish. Now, yeah, I know that we have Google Translate out there and stuff, but I don't have a problem, you know, doing a Zoom or a WhatsApp video call. Which I do, in fact, literally every day. I said, okay, Carlos, can you explain this part to me? Whenever I send bank formats to leads, I try to send them already filled out. And then whatever question they have, I mean, I'm sure they can access to, like I said, Google Translate, or anyone who speaks Spanish that they can trust. Or if they have none of those, or maybe they have run it by Google and they have some sort of idea what that says there, I can fill in the blanks.
Okay. And I think I have maybe one more question. You mentioned that 95% of the property has to be completed for them to do the appraisal. Yeah. Is there a cost for the appraisal? I mean, you know, in the United States, we have to pay for an appraisal, the bank to come out and do that. That's added on, or that's part of the loan, or that's part of the fee when you go to closing?
Okay. Since now we're getting to the fees part, let me be as thorough as possible.
Sure.
So in general, I would say if a property is under 10 million pesos, that's 500,000 US, give or take. I think under no circumstance should the appraisal exceed $500, no more than $900 US. No more than $900 US for a $500,000 property, give or take. Of course, if the value is less, the payment will be lesser accordingly. There's another fee that banks charge here. They call it comisión por apertura. It may not say much, but basically, whenever you sign a credit with them, they will subtract automatically 1% of the loan value. So that leaves you at 99% of your original credit line. If your numbers are pretty relaxed, then that shouldn't be a problem. However, if your numbers are tight, that 1% could, be something to bear in mind. That they will subtract it, yes or yes. Every now and then, but that's not up to any one of us, the banks will have some promotions that they say, okay, this month there will be no appraisal charge for anyone. Okay, great. That means if you can save $900 US, you're pretty good for yourself. Every now and then they will say to us, this month or any deals that are closed within the next 30 or 60 days do not have to pay that 1% fee, which is always the heftier amount, and that's pretty good news too. But I much rather tell them there's two costs with the bank: appraisal and the 1% fee, that so that they can have in mind. Now, let me say this also, because it's important that people have it clear. We, as a company, do not get paid by banks on any loan we close with foreigners. So I'm going to share with you a brochure that I'd like you to go over, of course. But since we are talking about this now, there are two fees the company I work for considers for foreigners. And let me be here pretty clear. We are not going to push through a process in the pipeline that we do not believe has pretty good chances of success. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a $425 one-time payment for pushing the dossier, the file, into the bank pipeline.
An application.
Exactly.
Fee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. An origination fee, if you will. And the company also charges a 2.5% fee on the line that we are able to secure. Okay. Those are two costs that also have to be borne in mind, not with the bank. And in this case, it will be on this side of the ball.
Okay. So in order to get, let's say I want a $400,000 loan, that's going to be times 2.5%. That's 10,000 plus 400.
Yeah, 425.
So it's about 10,400 just to get the loan.
That 2.5%, we do not charge until the line has been secured. It does not have to be paid up front. On that regard, I want to be clear. Okay, it's basically a success fee. If we got it, you pay for it. If we don't get it, you owe us nothing on that regard. Of course, when we don't get it, we'll try, like I said, we'll get back to the bank and say, what happened? Because we're not going to push through a file that did not comply with the minimum requirements the bank has set for us in the first place. Now, okay. About closing costs, because I get that question a lot. Oh, Carlos, suddenly all these numbers start adding up and it's quite a big number. Well, what's going on here? Yeah, just bear this in mind. Property taxes, and I'm pretty sure you're pretty well aware of this, in Mexico are ridiculously low versus US. I would say
1%.
Yeah, I mean, in the US, you would pay like 1% of the property value every year. In Mexico, I mean, I would say it's a fraction of that. How fractional? I would say about 10% of that. We are anywhere between 10% and 20% of 1%.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So, you're going to pay your property taxes in the United States. You pay 2.5% on a $400,000 home. Your property taxes are $400 annually. So that's like maybe, I don't know, almost $1 a day.
Like, I mean, in the US, it's got to be 10 times more than it is in Mexico in terms of property taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in the end, it balances out.
It does. Yeah, I agree. It does balance out. It comes down to, do you want, and this goes back to the beginning of this conversation, is do you want to be higher and exceed your competition by accessing a villa or a 3-bedroom home, which, and I'm happy to share my numbers. I'm doing 90% at $330 a night for the past year, which is
awesome.
Great. And I operate 10 other units. There's things that go into it. I talk about this in my online course, and my book is do not skim on the decorations. Like, the decorations are the first impression that anybody sees on Airbnb. You might, I see it time and time again. Everybody goes through the process. They buy the house. They've spent a lot of money and they just, yeah, that's fine. I'll just take the developer's, furniture package, or we'll just decorate it like this and we're ready to go. Let's put it on Airbnb. And I think that that's a big thing. So with the loan, this 2.5% success fee, you want to call it, it evens itself out. You got 20 years, a 20-year loan. You can pay it off early, as we just figured out that you can basically pay off. If you owe 100 months, you pay off 98 months. You're only getting that fee on the last month, which is another, I guess, loophole, you want to call it.
Yep.
You've accessed an entire market that is unobtainable for people that don't have, cash like this. This is why I got my loan. I just did it the wrong way. I wish I met you 2 years ago. And I'm not against it. I'm making more money than I would if I had a 1-bedroom or a studio. And this is just specifically here in Tulum. I'm talking about Tulum, but this works in all of Mexico. And you have to do a lot of market research. Playa del Carmen, Puerto Morelos is a great spot. This is a question I have too. We have land. Do you finance land?
Not at this point. Not at this point. However, it's something that we have taken to banks for them to start to consider. And I'm sure 2024 is going to bring some good news on that regard, even for construction. Of course, if we start doing land, construction would just be the ensuing logical step.
Yeah, because I was going to say, if let's just say I have $80,000 to buy a piece of land and I want to build something to sell it, I want to build something to sell it and become a developer, I'll buy the land, but will you finance construction? So maybe that's going to be coming in.
It will have to come out as a co-pack. No doubt in my mind. Now, you were saying about the appraising factor. I don't know if your audience knows this or even yourself. There are more than 1 million Americans living legally in Mexico. Out of the United States, the second country where most Americans live in is Mexico, and this number is projected to grow exponentially over the next 20 years with the baby boomers retiring. With the having Merida, it's just I'd say 60 miles from Tulum or Cancun. All that north part of the Yucatan Peninsula, which is just South Florida. That's gonna change. I mean, it's already changing with shipyards. It's already changing with some ports. Disney cruises are coming down to that part.
The cruise lines are coming.
So it's just going to take off tremendously, and it's a hot spot. Property appraisal is just going to be insane over the next. I mean, it's already happening, but over the course of the next 5-10 years, this is the time to do it if you want to, jump on board.
Yeah, I agree. I had another question in regards to. I can't remember what it was. I don't remember what it was. So what I'll do is I will put I on my website, I have a form that they can fill out, and then we can start a group chat with each person that's interested. And this goes for anywhere in Mexico. Anywhere in Mexico for Europeans, Canadians, as well as Americans, correct?
That's correct.
Now, let me ask you, this is the question I was going to ask you, is you are working with a European bank. Why does a European bank have interest in, not interest in money, I mean like interest, like they're interested in financing foreigners in Mexico? There has to be something there that they see something that's happening here in Mexico.
The opportunity is just too good to pass up.
Yeah. That's pretty, yeah. I'm big on, if you follow the money, you find the truth. And
Exactly.
if a European bank is willing to take on the risk to finance people here, they have millions of dollars in their market research that they're putting in, and they probably saw that, you mentioned the baby boomers. I didn't think about that, but that's a good observation to look at.
Yeah, I mean, just recently we were approached by a group of Japanese investors, and they said, "Hey, we want a piece of that. How can we be, the times of 0% money, it's over. So now they're starting to look elsewhere. Okay. I mean, the country has many opportunities. It's got many issues that they will be taken care of over time, but tremendous
Yeah,
potential in Mexico.
of course. Well, I want to thank you for your time. This was super helpful for me.
Great.
And as we get more questions on this video,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be sure to share them with you, and maybe we can do a follow-up.
Please, by all
I'll
means.
leave a link below so that people can fill out the form, and then we can start a group chat and go from there. So
I love it. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, pretty
yeah,
excited. Let's make this
thank you
happen.
so much. Yeah, I'm glad this finally came to fruition. It's
Yeah.
literally taken me like 2.5 years to figure this out. As I keep meeting people and being in touch with the right people, it's all coming together. So thank you for your time. And
Hang in there. We're gonna get you out of Casa Express pretty soon.
I know we need to. So thank you so much, man.
You're very welcome, Nick. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you. Bye.
Bye.
So yes, I want to thank everybody that came here. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment, like, subscribe, and I can get you guys set up with everything. My goal here is to bring all of this information to you. Like I have spent the past 3 years doing this for myself, and over time I've put these videos out on YouTube. I've gotten clients, I've grown a business. I'm gonna change this channel up to provide more value, even show some stuff into my personal life so we can get to know one another. And this is something that, if you don't know me, I left everything and moved down here, bought a car, started driving to Argentina, fell in love with this area, the people, this country, bought my own property here, and I just never thought that this would be my life. And I'm trying to make something from nothing and help everybody else do the same, because none of this information is out there. It's very, very wild west. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment and reach out to me. I do have an online course that I recently launched, as well as a book. If you are interested in reading it or joining my course, I go into very, very deep detail of how the taxes, how I structure my taxes, how you can structure your taxes, and more people like Carlos that can do it for you. Some of the people probably watching this are a part of that. I know a lot of people have reached out to me in regards to that. So I want to thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we will talk soon. So thank you so much. And